"This thing 3 times a day?" asked the Apache girl. What the cowboy did changed everything. A young Apache girl moved slowly near a small stream that was almost gone. Her steps were weak, and her breathing was shallow. She had been sick for many days, maybe weeks, but she did not complain. In her world, pain was something you learned to carry. Her family's camp was nearby. The winter had been cruel. Food was scarce, and sickness had taken strength from many people. The girl's mother watched her with worried eyes but said nothing. Worry did not bring food or healing. That morning, something unusual happened. A horse came running through the open land, wild with fear. On its back was a man, barely holding on. The horse stumbled near the stream and fell to its knees. The man rolled off and did not move. The Apache girl froze. Outsiders were dangerous. Everyone knew that. But something inside her pushed her forward. Maybe it was the way the man lay still. Maybe it was the horse breathing hard and afraid. She stepped closer, carefully. The man was a cowboy. His clothes were dusty and torn. His face was pale and his lips were cracked. One of his arms was bleeding where he had fallen. He tried to move but failed. The girl knelt beside him. She had never spoken to someone like him before. Her heart beat fast. Still, she took a small skin of water from her side and lifted it to his lips. He drank slowly, opening his eyes just enough to see her face. For a moment they stared at each other, two people from worlds that did not trust each other. "Thank you," the man whispered. She did not answer. She stepped back, unsure of what to do next. The cowboy tried to stand but fell again. He shook his head, weakly laughing. "I ain't going anywhere like this," he said. The girl watched him closely. She could see pain in his eyes, but not anger, not fear either, just tiredness. After a long pause, she motioned for him to stay where he was. She ran back to the camp and returned with a simple cloth. Without speaking, she cleaned his wound the best she could. Her hands shook, but she did not stop. The cowboy noticed her condition then, how thin she was. How her hands trembled, how her skin felt hot when she touched him. "You're sick," he said quietly. She nodded. He reached slowly into his saddlebag, careful not to scare her. He pulled out a small bottle and a folded paper. He held them up so she could see. "Medicine," he said. "For fever." Her eyes stayed on the bottle. She had never seen anything like it. He opened it and showed her the small tablets inside. He tried to explain using simple words and gestures. He pointed to the sun, moving his hand across the sky, then showed 3 fingers. "Morning. Noon, night," he said. She listened carefully, her brow tight with effort. She took one tablet from his hand and turned it over, curious and unsure. Then she looked at him and asked softly, "This thing 3 times a day?" The question hit him harder than the fall. He nodded slowly. "Yes, 3 times every day." She studied his face as if trying to decide whether the words were true. Finally, she swallowed the tablet with a little water. The cowboy leaned back, watching her. He had planned to rest, maybe leave once he could ride again. But now that thought felt wrong. He stayed. The day passed slowly. The girl returned again in the afternoon, just like he showed her. She took the medicine again, trusting him more than she realized. Each time he explained again, patient and calm. By night her fever had not broken, but she seemed a little less weak. She sat nearby, watching the stars while the cowboy rested against a rock. "You saved me," he said quietly. She shook her head. "Water," she said. "Only water." He smiled faintly. "Still counts." In the darkness, both of them wondered what tomorrow would bring, knowing that something small had already begun to change. And neither of them understood yet just how much everything was about to change. The next morning came slowly, wrapped in cool air before the heat returned. The cowboy woke with stiffness in his body and dust on his clothes. For a moment he forgot where he was. Then he saw the desert stretching wide, the quiet camp nearby, and the Apache girl sitting by the dying fire. She was awake before him. She watched him carefully, not afraid but still cautious. When their eyes met, she stood and brought him water again. This time she did not hesitate. He thanked her and she gave a small nod. He noticed something different. Her steps were still slow but not as weak as before. Her eyes looked clearer. It was not much, but it was enough to give him hope. "Morning," he said. She did not know the word, but she understood the tone. She pointed to the rising sun and smiled slightly. He reached for the medicine bottle and held up one tablet. He waited. She nodded before he even finished showing her. She took it with water just as he taught her. He felt something settle inside his chest. Trust. As the day warmed, people from the camp began to notice him. They watched from a distance, silent and alert. Some looked angry. Some looked afraid. None came close. The girl moved between him and the camp like a quiet wall. She brought him food, simple and small, but enough. He ate slowly, careful not to offend. "You don't have to keep doing this," he said gently. She shook her head. "You stay," she said. It was not a request. It was a statement. He stayed. As hours passed, he learned more without words. He saw how little they had, how thin the children were, how the elders moved with pain in every step. He realized sickness was not rare here. It was everywhere. At noon, the girl came again for the medicine. She sat beside him this time. She watched him open the bottle, count the tablets, and hand her one. She copied everything he did, careful and serious. "3 times," she said quietly, holding up her fingers. "Yes," he replied. "You got it." She looked proud of that. Later, a man from the camp approached. He was older, strong even with age. His eyes were sharp. He stood close enough now to see the cowboy clearly. The girl spoke to him in her own language. Her voice was calm but firm. The man listened, his gaze never leaving the cowboy. The cowboy stood slowly, hands open, showing he meant no harm. He bowed his head slightly. It was not something he learned from books. It just felt right. The man said nothing, then turned and walked away. The girl let out a breath she did not know she was holding. That night the girl's fever broke. It happened quietly. She sat near the fire, shivering at first, then breathing easier. The cowboy noticed the change. He checked her forehead with the back of his hand. "You're cooler," he said, smiling. She did not fully understand the words, but she understood the smile. She smiled back, tired but peaceful. She slept deeply that night. The next day she walked a little stronger. She laughed once softly when the wind moved her hair into her face. It was a small sound, but it stayed with him. He wanted to leave medicine for others, but he knew trust did not work that way. Not here. Not yet. Instead, he taught the girl more. He showed her how to keep the tablets dry, how to mark time using the sun, how missing one could slow healing. She listened like her life depended on it. Maybe it did. Some in the camp watched with growing interest. A mother brought her child closer one afternoon, not speaking, just watching. The cowboy felt eyes on him all the time now. Trouble came near sunset. 2 men rode in from the west, cowboys like him. Their faces hardened when they saw where he was. "What are you doing?" one asked sharply. The Apache girl stepped forward without thinking. She stood between them. "He's helpin'," she said, her words simple but clear. The riders laughed. "Helpin' who?" The cowboy raised his hand. "I'm leaving soon," he said. "No trouble." The men did not believe him, but the elders appeared then, standing behind the girl, silent, watching. The riders felt it, the weight of many eyes. They left with warnings and hard looks. The cowboy knew then he could not stay long. That night he told the girl with gestures and slow words. He pointed to the land beyond. He pointed to himself. He pointed back to the camp. She understood enough. Her face fell. "You go," she said quietly. "Not yet," he answered. "Not until you're strong." She thought for a long moment. Then she nodded. When morning came, she was waiting with the medicine already in her hand. 3 times a day. She no longer asked the question. She already knew the answer. The desert did not change, but the feeling in the air did. The days felt heavier now, like something unseen was moving closer. The Apache camp was quieter than before. People watched the cowboy more closely, and not all eyes were kind. The girl was stronger. She walked without stopping now. She helped her mother, carried water, and even laughed with the younger children. Each morning, noon, and night, she took the medicine just as she was taught. She never missed a time. The cowboy noticed everything. He noticed how some elders whispered when she passed. He noticed how a few people looked at the medicine with fear, as if it were a trick instead of help. One afternoon, the girl did not come at noon. The sun stood high, and the cowboy waited. He watched the path she always took, but she did not appear. A bad feeling settled in his chest. He stood and walked slowly toward the camp, stopping when he reached the edge. Voices rose ahead, not shouting but sharp, angry. He saw the girl standing before several elders. Her shoulders were straight, but her hands were tight at her sides. One elder pointed at the bottle in her hand. Another shook his head. The cowboy understood without knowing the words. They were afraid of change, afraid of something they did not control. The girl spoke, her voice steady. She touched her chest, then lifted her hands to the sky, then pointed at the cowboy. She was telling them she was alive because of him. The elders listened, but doubt stayed on their faces. One of them stepped closer and took the bottle from her hand. He held it up, studying it like an enemy. The cowboy stepped forward then. The camp went still. He stopped a few steps away, keeping space between them. He did not speak right away. He knelt instead, slowly, showing respect. Then he took another bottle from his bag and placed it on the ground between them. He pointed to himself, then to the girl, then to the bottle. He touched his heart and bowed his head. "I help," he said simply. The elder looked at him for a long time. The wind moved through the camp, lifting dust and dry leaves. Finally, the elder placed the bottle back into the girl's hands, but his eyes said this was not over. That night, the girl came to the cowboy later than usual. She sat beside him in silence. "They scared," she said softly. "I know," he replied. She looked at the bottle. "They think bad," he nodded. "Different doesn't always feel safe." She was quiet for a long time, then she looked up at him. "You go." The question hurt more than he expected. "Soon," he said honestly, "but not yet." The next morning he made his choice. He packed his saddlebag with what little he had left. He counted the tablets carefully, dividing them into smaller cloth wraps. He showed the girl how to do it too, again and again, until she could do it without him. Then he pointed west. "I get more," he said. "Medicine." Her eyes widened. She grabbed his sleeve. "Danger." "I know." She shook her head hard. "Don't go." He placed his hand gently over hers. "I come back." She did not let go right away. When she finally did, her eyes were wet, but she stood strong. The ride was worse than he expected. The land was rough and his injury still burned. He rode carefully, avoiding known paths. Near sunset, he saw dust behind him. Riders. He turned off course, pushing his horse harder than he should have. But they caught up. They were not strangers, just men who saw an easy target. They took his horse. They took his bag. They left him with nothing but pain and dust. When he finally reached town, he walked in on shaking legs. He traded his boots for medicine, his jacket for water, his hat for bandages. He rested only long enough to stand again. The journey back felt endless. When he finally reached the land near the camp, night had fallen. He stumbled forward, calling softly. The girl heard him first. She ran. She reached him before he fell. When she saw his condition, her breath caught. Blood stained his shirt. His face was bruised, but in his hands he still held the medicine. "You came back," she whispered. "Promised," he said, forcing a smile. The camp gathered quickly. This time no one stood back. The elders saw the wounds. They saw the supplies. They saw what it had cost him. The girl helped clean his injuries just as she had done on the first day. Her hands were steady now. That night more medicine was given, not only to her but to others, slowly, carefully. No one argued. As the fire burned low, the elder who had doubted him sat nearby. He watched the cowboy, then spoke quietly. The girl translated with her eyes and her voice. "He says," she began, "you brave, but brave is not enough." The cowboy nodded. "I know," the elder continued. "He says you care." That was enough. The cowboy closed his eyes, exhaustion pulling him down. Around him, the camp felt different now. Not safe, not peaceful. But changed. And change, once started, did not turn back. The days that followed were quiet, but they were not easy. The cowboy's body healed slowly. His wounds were deep, and the desert did not forgive weakness. Still, he did not complain. Each morning he sat up by the fire, breathing through the pain, watching the camp wake around him. The Apache girl stayed close. She brought water, food, and clean cloths. She followed everything he had taught her before, now using it on him. She cleaned his injuries carefully, her face serious and focused. "You rest," she told him. He smiled faintly. "Guess I gotta listen now." She did not smile back, she shook her head. "You stubborn." That made him laugh, and the sound surprised both of them. The medicine began to help more people. At first it was given only to the weakest, children with hot skin, elders who coughed through the night. The girl helped explain when and how to take it. She pointed to the sun just like the cowboy had done for her. Morning, noon, night. Some people still feared the medicine, but fear was losing its strength. They had seen what it did for the girl. They had seen her walk, laugh, and work again. They trusted what they could see. The elders met often now. They watched the cowboy from a distance. He never pushed himself forward. He never asked for anything. When people came to him, he answered with patience. When they stayed away, he respected that too. One afternoon, a small boy collapsed near the fire. His mother cried out in fear. The cowboy moved without thinking, ignoring the pain in his side. He knelt beside the child and showed the girl what to do. Together, they helped the boy breathe easier. That moment changed something. The camp no longer saw the cowboy as a problem. They saw him as a tool for survival. The girl noticed it first. The way people nodded to him. The way children no longer hid when he passed. The way elders watched him with careful thought instead of anger. She sat beside him that night, staring into the fire. "They listen now," she said. He nodded. "They're smart people." She looked at him, confused. "Most men like you think we not." He met her eyes. "They'd be wrong." Her expression softened like a knot slowly coming loose. Trouble came again, but this time from far away. One morning, dust rose on the horizon. Not 2 riders, many soldiers. The camp grew tense. People gathered their children and stood close together. Fear returned like a shadow. The cowboy recognized the signs. "They want land," he said quietly. The girl felt her chest tighten. "They take, they try," he answered. The elders met quickly. Voices were low but urgent. The girl was called forward. She listened, then looked back at the cowboy. "They ask, you speak." His heart beat harder. "Me," she nodded. "You know them." He stood slowly, every step hurting but steady. "I'll try." When the soldiers arrived, they spoke with hard voices and clear demands. Papers were shown. Lines were drawn in the dirt. The land, they said, was no longer safe for the tribe. The cowboy stepped forward. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He spoke calmly, using words they understood. He talked about sickness, about survival, about how moving now would kill more people than it saved. Some soldiers laughed. Some listened. Then the girl stepped beside him. She did not speak their language well, but she did not need to. She pointed to the children, to the elders, to the medicine, to the cowboy. She stood tall. The silence that followed felt heavy. The soldiers did not leave that day, but they did not force the tribe to move either. They said they would return. When they were gone, the camp let out a breath it had been holding. That night the elders sat with the cowboy. They spoke slowly, carefully. The girl translated when she could, filling the rest with understanding. They asked him to stay longer. "I can't forever," he said honestly. They nodded. They had not asked for forever. Days passed. Strength returned to many people. The camp felt alive again. Songs returned at night. Laughter followed the children through the dust. The girl changed too. She was no longer just someone who listened. She taught, she corrected. She reminded others when it was time for medicine. She became a bridge, strong and steady. One evening she sat with the cowboy under the stars. "You changed things," she said. He shook his head. "You did." She thought about that, then she smiled. Maybe both. He knew then that she no longer needed him the way she once had, and that was the hardest truth to accept. When the cowboy finally stood without pain, he began to prepare to leave, quietly, without telling many. The girl noticed anyway. "You go soon," she said. "Yes," she nodded, but her eyes stayed on the ground. "You leave, but we stay." "You'll be okay," he said gently. She looked up. "Because of you." "No," he replied, "because of you." They sat in silence, the fire crackling between them. The world had changed, not loudly, not all at once, but enough that it would never go back to what it was before. The morning the cowboy left, the desert was calm. The sky was clear, and the wind moved slowly, as if it did not want to rush the moment. The camp was already awake. People pretended to stay busy, but everyone knew what day it was. The Apache girl stood near the fire, holding a small cloth bundle. Inside were the last medicines, wrapped carefully, counted and ready. She had done it herself, just as she was taught. Her hands did not shake anymore. The cowboy walked toward her, his steps steady now. His body still carried marks of pain, but his eyes were clear. He looked around the camp one last time. Children ran and laughed. Elders sat in the sun, breathing easier than before. Life had returned. "You did good," he said softly. She lifted her chin. "We did good," he smiled. "Yes, we did." The elders came forward. One of them spoke slowly, choosing words with care. The girl listened closely, then turned to the cowboy. "He says you welcome here, always." The cowboy swallowed hard. "That means a lot." The elder stepped closer and placed a hand over his heart. It was not a gesture of thanks alone. It was respect. The girl watched it all, feeling something warm and heavy in her chest. She did not cry. She had learned strength did not mean hiding pain, but standing with it. She walked with the cowboy to the edge of the camp. His horse waited there, calm and ready. He checked the straps, then paused. "You remember everything?" he asked. She nodded. "Medicine 3 times, teach others, watch son." "And if trouble comes," she looked toward the open land. "We stand together." He nodded slowly. That was the answer he hoped for. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a simple metal piece worn from years of use. He placed it in her hand. "For time," he said, "when clouds hide the sun." She studied it carefully. "I keep it." He mounted his horse, then stopped once more. He looked back at her. "You saved me too," he said. She shook her head, smiling softly. "Water," she said again. "Only water." He laughed, the sound light and full. Then he turned and rode away, becoming smaller against the wide desert. The girl watched until he was gone. Life did not stop after that. It moved forward. Days turned into weeks. The medicine was used wisely. People followed the routine. Morning, noon, night. The girl made sure of it. When someone forgot, she reminded them. When someone feared it, she explained. She spoke calmly. She spoke with care. People listened. The soldiers returned once, then again. Each time they found the tribe stronger, healthier, more prepared. They spoke less. They watched more. Eventually they stopped coming. The land remained. The girl grew older, not fast but steady. She learned more from the elders. She learned stories, songs, and ways that had almost been lost. She also taught what she knew about healing, about timing, about care. She became someone others looked to when things were unclear. Years passed. One season, sickness came again, carried by travelers and cold winds. But this time the camp did not panic. They worked together. They used what they had learned. Loss came, but it did not take everything. The girl stood strong. Sometimes at night she held the metal piece in her hand and looked at the stars. She remembered a tired cowboy by a dying stream. She remembered a question spoken in confusion and hope. "This thing, 3 times a day," she smiled at the memory. Far away, the cowboy lived a quiet life. He told no grand stories. When asked about the scars on his body, he only said he had been lucky. But sometimes he looked west and wondered. He hoped the girl was strong. He hoped the camp was safe. He hoped the small thing he had carried in his bag had done what it was meant to do. It had. Years later, travelers passed through the land and spoke of a tribe that survived when others did not. A tribe that healed itself. A tribe that trusted care over fear. They spoke of a woman who taught with patience and strength, who counted time by the sun and by something small and metal, who believed change could come quietly. The girl heard those stories too. She listened with calm eyes. She did not correct them. She did not take credit. She knew the truth. Change did not come from power or force. It came from a moment of kindness, from a choice to stay, from a question asked without shame. The desert stayed wide and quiet.